Hi, welcome to the Always Evolving podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick. In our human journey, imperfection is inevitable. And along the way, we may unintentionally hurt others, prompting the need for apology. Yet the effectiveness of apologies vary. So how can we master this art of a sincere apology? Dr. Chris Duquette, licensed psychotherapist, is joining us today to help us to learn the importance of repair and how to give a great apology.
It's okay that we don't have it all figured out. We're all just taking it a day at a time. This is Always Evolving with Dr. Liz.
Dr. Chris, welcome to the Always Evolving podcast.
Hi, Dr. Fedrick. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Before we jump in, if you could tell everybody who you are, what you do, what you specialize in.
Sure. I'm Dr. Chris Duquette, and I'm a licensed therapist. I work out of Southern California, and I specialize in complex trauma. Communication is certainly part of that. I'm also a professor, and I teach the next generation of helpers, both nurses and budding therapists in Canada and the U.S.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. I taught for a while at a university here, and I loved that type of work to, really, as you're saying, our new generation of helpers. It's important work. Yes.
Thank you.
So what we're going to be chatting about today is the importance of repair. And you're going to be giving us some insights into an effective apology. When I work with couples, I specialize in relationships and couples intimacy. And a lot of times we do dive into that rupture is inevitable. Like every relationship is going to experience rupture, sometimes regularly. But that's not actually the main barrier to a healthy relationship. It is the ability to take accountability, to talk through it in an effective way, and to effectively repair. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those things, whether we see couples or individuals, most of us bring our relationships into therapy. And we know that many of us did not grow up in homes where repair was modeled. And as humans, we learn so well from modeling that it can be tough if we haven't seen it in practice, knowing how to repair. The good thing is we're neuroplastic. And so, this is a skill like any other skill that we can learn.
Yes. And that is so true. And I try to remind my clients of that. My model is called relationship reprogramming, because we may have been programmed a certain way, which we all were, whatever, good, bad, and in between. And we also have the ability to reprogram that anytime we so choose. What does that look like when you're talking about an effective apology? Because absolutely, we weren't raised, many of us were not raised where there was healthy communication or accountability. Why is that so important, and what does it look like?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think whenever I talk about apologies with clients, a lot of times we'll start with what a good apology doesn't look like, because I think a lot of us are more familiar with that. And I like to call those, the faux apology, the no apology, and the so-so apology. And those are a variety. We might start out actually trying to offer an apology, but the ego and the defenses get in the way. And those can be the variety of, I'm sorry you're so sensitive. I'm sorry you took that wrong. I'm sorry, or I was just kidding. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of it, it doesn't feel good, right? And the purpose of an apology is sort of protecting our important relationships. And so we want to deliver an apology that's actually going to land, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of humility and vulnerability to, own our part of an issue. And so I help people figure out, how to do it more gracefully so that it actually connects with what they're trying to convey to the other person.
Yeah, because it's exactly what you're describing. Like I'm sorry you felt that way. I'm sorry it came across that way. I'm sorry, but it's not actually a lot of times the accountability, because that's hard. That's hard to admit or acknowledge that, especially somebody we love, that we hurt them. And a lot of times it maybe really wasn't the intention. And so we try so hard to get them to see that, but at the cost of them feeling then very dismissed and invalidated.
Yes, dismissed and invalidated are important points. And we talk about, a lot now about intent versus like how something actually lands, impact.
Impact. Yeah.
And, you know, it is. I mean, most of us, hopefully most of us in our loving relationships and our important ones, we do have good intent, but we're people and it gets, you know, we will butt heads regardless. It's inevitable. I like to say, you know, we have these big supercomputer brains that we lug around on our heads with these sort of rabbit-like nervous systems, and it goes off track all the time. And so, yeah, repair is that it's kind of the glue that holds a relationship together. I think most of us, you know, if we're in an expensive cabana in Hawaii with a partner or a friend, can have a good time. And sometimes we think that's where really the meat and the glue of a relationship happens. But it's really in the times where we disconnect and we rupture and then we come back together. So repairs are really, I think, where the real security in a relationship is built.
Yeah, because it's so easy to run. It's so easy to jump ship when things are hard. And when things are fun and going well, I mean, we're like, yeah, we're in it. Of course, this is enjoyable. But when it's not enjoyable and we still choose that person and we still make efforts to choose that person, that is so impactful for the safety and security of a relationship. What do these steps look like for an effective apology?
So they're going to look a little different on the relationship, whether it's, you know, our children or a partner or a work colleague, someone we really, really like and care about, someone who is maybe a little bit harder for us. So they'll all look a little different, but I like to break it down to about 5 steps. And the first step is we want to express regret. That's, I'm sorry, you know. And the second step is we want to explain what went wrong. And this one can be a little sticky because if we go into too much explaining, we sort of verge into what you talked about as sort of that invalidation, where now we're trying to, you know, we do want to sort of show the other person that we understand what went off track, because sometimes we don't, right? Sometimes we can be angry about something and we have a friend or partner who it's like they see the scenario as completely different. So we do like to offer, I think, a little bit of explanation. And then we want to acknowledge our responsibility. And sometimes we'll have conflict. Like I know I've had times where I've had to apologize where it was 100% me. You know, it was, I came home, I'd had a rough day, I yelled at my kids, or I, you know, was snippy with my husband. And then there are other times where it's a mutual conflict, right? There's 2 people in there. And then we just want to sort of aim to keep our side of the street clean. You know, if we offer an apology and we're waiting for the other person to sort of own their part of it yet, in mature relationships, sometimes we have to be the first one to do that. And then show a willingness to repair. That can be, you know, I want to make this better. I want to make this right. And then asking for forgiveness, which is a piece that I think most of us skip. And I think that's because, you know, we all have a complicated relationship with shame and and rejection, right? And so when we ask someone, you know, can you forgive me? We're inviting rejection. You know, it opens up the door to that question or that answer, like maybe no, maybe that person can't forgive us. And that's, you know, that's a core wound that many of us have from our parents and early caregivers. You know, the idea we're not allowed to make mistakes. So it's humbling to ask for forgiveness. But I find, especially, you know, when there isn't abuse, when there is behavior change, the things that, you know, we will often tell clients, if someone's apologizing all the time, but there's no changes, they're not really operationalizing it. But most of the time, if you're with someone you deeply care about, and they say, will you forgive me? Most of us are going to get a yes. And then there's a last sort of half step in there that sometimes someone needs space and they can't forgive us right away or at all. And not rushing to needing them to accept an apology, because it really shifts it from being about them to now being about soothing our feelings. And then I find, and hey, listen, I've done it, but then we just have to start all over again because, you know, we negate all the good work and goodwill we built up to that point.
Yeah, great points, because sometimes we apologize through the lens of we do want to feel better. And that might be what you were discussing earlier of we're apologizing so that they'll apologize back. So we have like this agenda with it, or just so that we can soothe our shame, as you're describing. And I think that's really important when you go into an apology, is to do some of that self-reflection and to clean that up even prior to going in. So give yourself that pep talk of, I'm uncomfortable and I'm struggling and I know why. But this moment is not about me. It's about me making it right with this person that I love. And as you're also describing, an apology without behavior change is just manipulation. That's not an apology at all. And so true apologies require accountability and someone demonstrating change, and someone being us as well, right? So that's also, checking in on, okay, am I also working to change my behavior if I keep apologizing for this thing?
Absolutely. And it's one of the things I encourage people, because it's a hard skill and it can be so humbling when you first learn how terrible you're doing it. I know, I have children now and they've told me, like, I've had to apologize to them, and you get really good at it and it gets reflexive and easy. And then the people around you start to do it better. So it's one of those things, I have sometimes people come into therapy and say, well, my partner doesn't apologize to me, or, what about the thing that somebody else did? And we always kind of work on, our behavior is really the only thing that we can control. But we do learn from each other. And, when we surround ourselves with people, when we model behavior that we want to see, people in our lives will pick it up.
Absolutely. Change breeds change. And that's what we've got to keep in mind for sure. Chris, where can people find you? Where can they find you online, social media?
Yeah, I am at therapyhb.com is my website, and I do take clients in the state of California only. And then at Dr. Chris Duquette on Instagram, where I'm able to offer, like you, good sound advice from a practitioner and ways to feel and function better.
I love it. Well, thank you so much again for being here, Dr. Chris. I really appreciate your insights and your help, and hopefully people can take this and start applying it right away.
Thank you, Liz. It was great to be here.
Thank you for joining us on the Always Evolving podcast. You can find our episodes on YouTube, and you can head over to our website, www.evolvecounselingaz.com, to subscribe to our weekly e-newsletters. We would also love to connect on Instagram at evolvecounselingaz.
This is Always Evolving with Dr. Liz.